Okay, so this is part 2 of my story and how Azrael unraveled into a situation where she's making false claims and doing a smear campaign against King, who you know as R. Kelly, but I call him King. Okay, so I left the story where the women were back at the Trump. And as you know, through the transcripts, Azrael was writing King, they both were, and, obviously with very, very suggestive letters, and that's all documented, where she's begging him for a sexual relationship because it hadn't happened and it never was going to happen. And meanwhile, I am in contact with him and discussing how we can get them to move on and move on without there being trouble. We both knew that Azrael was volatile, and what that means is anything said that she didn't like at that stage, that wasn't to her approval, could have gone the wrong way. She's a very spoilt adult human, like a sociopath completely, and very charming, and she can be very charming if she wants to be, but she is completely untrustworthy and completely double-minded and unstable-minded. There is nothing inside her that's actually authentic. So whatever she tweets, whatever she says, you can take with a grain of salt that she doesn't believe a word of what she's saying or doing. And of course, she's been raised that way. She comes from a family who are very sociopathic, narcissistic, and have raised her to kind of see herself with this elevated image and quite outlandish goals when you think about it. So anyway, I had been writing King letters and communicating with him about how he could safely remove both women from his care. I didn't like the fact that they were swindling him into taking care of them by staying at the Trump. I realised they were also helping to look after the residents, but his residents. And I need to make sure that you all know this, that they never lived with King. There's a lot of these women that are saying, we lived with him, I lived with him, I moved in with him. When they say that, basically he was paying their rent for wherever they were staying. That's not living with him. That's not living inside his apartment with him. Azrael and Joycelyn lived in a separate accommodation at the Trump, and it was under Azrael's name. The only time they were in his residence, in terms of living, was possibly when he was in jail. And I, of course, was stuck overseas. So when you understand that they didn't live with him, and they were now at the Trump by themselves, and also, they had a lease issue, so they had to move out anyway. I saw it as an opportunity to move them on and giving King an excuse, actually, for him not to have to have them around him or at the Trump anymore. So I did put my foot down with King on that, because I knew he was afraid. I knew he was afraid to make any move that was wrong, whether it be in the government's eyes or with the two women. And that's the thing, when you're dealing with people that are mentally unstable, you have to tread very lightly. And when you're also dealing with a situation where you have both sets of parents that are scrambling and doing all they could to pollute their minds with ideas of how they could turn against him and make a profit, and swindling the media with stories of their captivity and being used as sex slaves, and slandering his name profusely and completely maliciously, vindictively, and in a very evil manner. When you have that situation, when he was facing this situation, everything he did had to be thought out. Everything that King did had to be thought out and planned out perfectly, because you have the government that's watching everything he does. So no matter what he does, he can't win. The media are looking at both women and, seeing how they are being treated. So if he was to throw them out, or if he was to ask them to leave, even in a strong manner, then they would report that he was abusing them. And if he was to even ask them to leave kindly and give them money like he tried the first time, it was still going to go badly. It was still going to go badly because they were obsessed with him. And when you have a situation where you have women that are obsessed with you, or people that are obsessed with you, you cannot win. And because especially when you're facing a trial for people that you've rejected, women that you've rejected in some form, and people that you've fired. And that's really what he's on trial for. Women that he's rejected, women that he's broken up with, or women that he just didn't want anything to do with. And I know that Canik isn't delving deep into whether somebody was in a relationship with him or not. Their focus at the trial is just to dispute the charges and show that the charges that he's been charged with and are completely wrong. And of course, we all know that who know this case. But, that is what his defense team are focused on. They're not focusing on, disputing the validity of the relationships, which to me, I would not call any of these situations relationships, not even with Hayley, because you have a situation where she is a groupie and goes to live under his care with him paying the bills in whatever situation she was living in, just to be around him, and willing and happy to share him around with other women. And then you have Joycelyn and Azrael that had no sexual relationship with him at all, and no intimate relationship, but they were also living as interns under his care. And again, it's all charity here. A lot of this is charity that's been misconstrued. And when I say charity, it's King being generous in trying to share his talent with who he perceives as women in need from his culture and from his background. But what happened is, they fall in love with him. They fell in love with him and didn't get what they wanted. And I think that if you ever come to know him, you can understand how he can attract and draw such incredible love and devotion and incredible passion. But at the same time, you have to understand a lot of these women come from broken homes where their fathers are not present. So King was playing a kind of fatherly role in a very strange situation, because that's not what he wanted, because he believed these women were mature enough to do the work as interns and assistants, and to learn from him, which is what they claimed they wanted. I'm talking particularly Azrael and Joycelyn. But then come to find out that they are in love with him and infatuated, and he couldn't keep, these women away from him or off him, no matter what he did. It became toxic when their parents insisted that he keep them and he look after, and he in fact pay them money to keep them, and he take them on as wives. I mean, that's extortion. It's not selling them, it's extortion, especially when the man hasn't expressed any interest in that, and that wasn't the original deal. They call that bait and switch, where you offer somebody something and you try and sell it some way, which is these women want to be your interns, they want to learn from you, let them tour with you, we'll give you permission. That's all they've ever wanted. They just want to be musicians. Please, 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 and thank you. And then they get inside, his care around him, and then it's switched to, well, now that you've got them, we know you're keeping them hostage and using them for sex, so you pay us money or we will X, Y, Z. And you pay us money for them and you help us build our businesses, our corrupt and ridiculous ideas, or X, Y, Z. That's extortion, it's coercion, it's not king trafficking. And you see how the government of the USA has twisted every single story to fit their narrative, and it's not reality. They don't want to face reality, because when you have to face the reality of what you've done to this man, it's completely, I don't know how they would sleep at night. I don't know how they would live with themselves. If I did this to another human being, I would literally hate myself. I would hate myself. There would be no way I could live with myself if as a human being I had done this to another human. Okay, so now I'm going to get to why you're here. You need to understand why Azrael flipped. And I'm sorry I had to give you the background of all of that, but I need to give you context because there's a lot of misconstrued ideas on both sides. And even though I've tried to challenge them, people have accused me of, playing one of these women like, a groupie, obsessed groupie. I mean, I'm a professional woman. I don't even live in the United States. I mean, common sense must rule at some stage. I understand people have problems with putting two and two together, that there is a lot of problems with just basic common sense, but you have to use your common sense. I can't do that for you. I can't think for you and reason for you that I'm a professional woman living in another country. I'm not a groupie. I've never asked him for a cent of his money. I am independent, and I've taken care of myself since I was 18, even though I come from an aristocratic background of privilege where I could have lived off my parents. I've always been independent. So all of that is ridiculous. And I think the people that are saying that, I think shame on you, because you really do need to get out. You really need to travel the world and see what's out there, because people don't live like you. Not everybody's scrambling to take advantage of everyone. And I understand in King's camp, that is a very common denominator, that you have women that just want him to pay their bills. But that isn't me. And you'll soon see that. And I can't wait for that, because I'm just so sick of hearing it. I don't care if, the mistrust is your issue. Just deal with it. But anyway, so I'm going to get back to my story and I explain why Azrael flipped on King in the end. So we saw an opportunity when his lease was coming up. I saw it particularly as an opportunity for him to make the move to remove them from that situation where he was paying their bills, and particularly remove them from Trump. And also, from that situation where he was taking care of them. So I did give King very firm advice that it was time. And no matter what the cost was going to be, which was a risk of Azrael or both of them flipping on him as a result of that, he had to do it, because he was not living his truth. He was not living his truth, which was that he was in love with me, that we were in a very committed, very, very beautiful relationship and exclusive relationship. And we had decided that from the get-go. I've never been a polygamist. I've never been in an open relationship, and I've never, ever shared a partner. So that situation was out for me, and King knew that and was very happy to go down that road with me, because, he didn't see me as a groupie. He never saw me as somebody who just wanted him for his money. And in fact, I said to him, do not give me a cent of your money. I, in fact, was intentional about that. I don't want a cent of your money. Do not ever give me a cent of your money. So, King knew that what we were And what we have was something special and something that he couldn't let go of. And he was willing to risk all for it, which is what love is, And if anyone's ever been truly in love with somebody in a very healthy manner, in a healthy relationship, when you found something special, when you found the one, when you found that person who is going to change your future and your future path. And I can't speak for King in how he feels about me, but I know that that is how we feel about each other. So fast forward, and King in some way managed to, I don't know how it unfolded, because there was I didn't get a lot of communication. You have to understand, I couldn't communicate. He couldn't communicate with me as openly as honestly as he wanted to. And I couldn't communicate with him as honestly and openly as I wanted to. But I could more than he could, because I wasn't on trial, and, I am not in the US, so I'm completely out of their jurisdiction to start, looking into my records or any of that. So anyway, when Azrael left the Trump, it was actually very planned. It was intentional. It wasn't as though King didn't want her to leave. What he didn't want was her to lose her mind about it, which is what happened. And that's what made him panic. He wasn't upset that she left. He was upset that she left with such anger and kind of bitterness, because he knew how easy it was from that point on for her just to flip the switch on him, because being poor at that stage for her, because they had no money. I mean, all of that money that King had, given them over the time that, they spent working as his assistant or helping him as an assistant intern, they swindled, so they had nothing. And King was still paying his bills and theirs, because of, they were house sitting, I guess, at that stage, and looking after his property. But anyway, so Azrael left. And when she left, I was aware of that. And even at that time when she left, she was still very devoted in a very unhealthy way. And I was concerned, because the whole idea of them leaving was for him to come clean about us and our relationship, and also to, to be able to live his truth, to be able to live in truth, and not have to play this role with them, and not have to dig in his pockets when, his pockets were already struggling because of the situation that their parents had caused him. And imagine, this is, you all have to understand something so important. Imagine two women whose families have caused all of this, and they have no shame in asking the man to continue to pay for their bills for nothing. I mean, a regular human being doesn't do that. People that are brought up with good morals don't do that. But anyway, so Azrael left, and she was making videos saying how she was in love with him and couldn't wait for him to get home, calling him her man. And I had a problem with that, because I thought, I've got to nip this in the butt, because if I don't do something now, it's going to get out of control. She's going to be writing books, she's going to be doing movies saying how in love she is with him, and putting him in a situation where he's still playing that role as her boyfriend. And that was outside of the point of why we did this, and so I contacted Azrael, and I said specifically to her, I introduced myself to her, I explained the story of why, back in 2019, we had them sent home. I explained our relationship, and I explained, what we were to each other. I explained King and I's relationship to her. And I specifically said to her, you need to stop claiming that he's your man and he's your boyfriend, because it's not true. He's been in love with me since 2018. He was in love with me before I was in love with him. That's the reality. I didn't chase him. We didn't chase each other. We had an incredible friendship, if I'm going to be completely honest. And, we became the best of friends, and we are within each other's age range enough to understand each other in a very intimate way. So our friendship grew very fast and we became very, very close. And we were friends, like deep. We had an incredible friendship before we started our relationship. So there was no secrets with us. He didn't need to keep anything from me. And I could be completely honest with him and I could ask him any questions I wanted. And he would answer. And that's the great thing about our friendship. So anyway, I explained this to Azrael, and as expected, she didn't respond, because her response would have been confirmation that she got my message, you see. So I think that her response was to the next step, because it was at the end of the year that they moved out, and that was when we had intended for them to go. And it was intentional. It wasn't an accident that Azrael left. We were trying to work it so it kind of fell in line with the lease, and it looked like he had no other option and all of that. It was very intentional. It wasn't something I have letters to prove it, 12-page letters that I would write him 3 times a week about the situation, trying to counsel him into how to do this with her safely and with both of them safely. So anyway, I did contact her. I explained who I was, and I directly said to her, do not call him your boyfriend anymore. He's not your boyfriend. We have a whole future planned out together, and this has to stop with you. That's when she flipped. It had nothing to do with visitation. It had nothing to do with Joycelyn becoming the new visitor on his visitors list. That story is very petty. They were already sharing him in their own minds. They believed that they were already sharing him. So that story makes no common sense at all, but when you understand that, now you can see why her reaction was so intense. She went on camera and tearing up his clothes and destroying everything that's his and crying and, claiming abuse and that the tears were actually coming from complete rejection and complete disbelief, because all her dreams were shattered with me. All her plans were shattered with me, because in her mind, of course, in her deluded mind, she was hoping to be his wife. She even called herself wifey for a long time after she left, and made a rap song about it. And, her reaction was of a rejected, completely betrayed lover, when she was not his lover, by the way. So let's be clear about that. Her reaction was of a betrayed woman, a scorned woman, so it had nothing to do with Joycelyn. For years, they lived together and they were like sisters, and, they believed, they had this, dual relationship with him, menage a trois. It wasn't true, of course, and I'm going to explain the Gal King interview with him at a later stage, but you go back to that interview, they lied about the whole situation. They kind of twisted it to say that, they were in a joint relationship with him, whereas he actually did tell the truth, but people kind of hear what they want to hear. But I think he put it in a way that could have been, taken either way, but people took it how they want to take it, which is what always happens with him. It's like people have an idea in their minds. They've been brainwashed with so much stuff from other people's stories, because you have to think, when was the last time that King actually spoke up about his relationship with them? When was the last time he spoke about any of his relationships? So all these people are talking on his behalf and brainwashing the masses about who he is, and he hasn't even had a chance to properly explain himself and explain what these people are and who these people are and how they fit into his life and into his circle and why they were around him. it was all good intentions. There was nothing seedy about it. There was nothing deviant about it. It was all very much, a mentor type situation that kind of fell completely apart because you had women that fell in love with him and in fact didn't want to be there for music. They changed their minds and decided they wanted to be there for him, and they wanted to have a relationship with him. And he wasn't interested in these younger women, but he kept them on board because he felt sorry for them. They came with stories of abuse and, I can't go home because my mother and father are abusing me and, I'm getting sexually abused and this and that and I don't have anywhere to go. And I don't have, and all of these, these stories that you're hearing in court, imagine they fed the same stories to him. These are really these are really bad liars, but incredible storytellers. When you have a pure heart like he has, when you have a pure heart, you will listen to these people and you will actually be convinced of their stories either way. So imagine what you're hearing in court, and King's getting those stories, victim stories, in order to keep them or, take care of them, and then when it doesn't work out how they want, then they're the victim on another level. So you have a lot of psychosis, a lot of sociopathy and a lot of narcissism in these women and men, and a lot of it comes from poverty. A lot of it comes from, the way that these people are raised and, the backgrounds that they come from, a lot of crime and a lot of, and crime that is acceptable, living in a situation where people are criminals and it's normal, becomes a thing where you're desensitized to, to all of that. So anyway, I'm going to end this story. So I think I've made it clear why she flipped. So she knew about me, and that is why she flipped. She still knows about me, but she wouldn't dare tell her family, and she would not dare tell anybody, because then she would have to explain what she's been saying to other people. And I know that both women had been telling lies to their families about what happened with him because they wanted the clout. They wanted their family's approval. They wanted that tick of, you did it. You did what we wanted you to do. We sent you there to seduce him and you did it. And it didn't happen. And they didn't want to be, obviously scolded by their families about not being able to achieve their goal, which was to seduce him into a sexual relationship. So instead they embellished in the end. I mean, her letters in one place say that he wasn't interested. He never tried anything, no matter what she did. And then it all of a sudden switched, which was to, he did, but it was when we were 18, when I was 18, and that's rubbish. It never happened. Because, if you count even the time frame, they were in and out. She was, at home at some stage and, living at the studio at others. He wasn't living at the studio and he used that space. He allowed them that space in the studio because they claimed they had nowhere to go and they couldn't go home and they wanted to work on their music. So it's just very, very convoluted and mixed up. But I think hopefully you understand it by now. It's been another long recording, but I wanted you to get this message out because I think that, the story of, she was upset with the visitation list and she went over to Larry's and, her Uncle Larry's, and he convinced her to switch. Now, I could tell you exactly when I sent her that message, and the time frame from which she started her smear campaign was very closely linked together. So imagine you've just heard that a man that you thought you were going to marry in your deluded, unhealthy mind, even though you've not been around him for a long time, and he sent you home numerous times, and he has even made it very clear that you're not mature enough for him, and you would, and he wasn't interested in so many ways. Anyway, in her mind, she was hoping to marry him. And hoping to even use the situation that he was in with the charges to coerce him into a situation where he had no choice, because it was kind of like, if I wasn't around, she probably would have got away with that, because he was under such pressure and such fear for his life, she may have gotten away with convincing him that the best option for him was to marry her. And I presented him with a way out by telling his truth, by being honest with his real life and who he really is and what he really wants in life, which is to be with me. But had he not had me, I think he would have gone down that path, not because he wanted to marry Azrael, not because he was interested in her, but because he was cornered into a situation where it was that or lose his freedom. And she may have gotten away with that, one of the biggest crimes, and it would have been a horrible situation for everybody. And I believe in my heart that she has psychopathic tendencies, and with a sociopath and psychopath who doesn't feel remorse and lacks empathy and is completely selfish and completely fraudulent and is completely masked up as this complete other person to the public, such a person is able to kill and take a life, is able to take a life very easily, in my view. And somebody could have gotten hurt in this situation even more so. I'm just so grateful that I was around for King, even as a friend. Even if we didn't have a relationship, I would have stuck by him as a friend. That was always my intention. So I would have been there to make sure he was okay and make sure that people weren't going to, put him in a situation where he had no other choice, because at that point when I came into his life, he really didn't have anyone that could get that close to him. I don't know where the people were in his life. I don't know where all these friends are that say they've been around for 20 years and all of that. And then they at the same time say that they minded their own business when it came to his personal life. How can you mind your own business when your friend is in trouble? You don't mind your own business. You make it your business to find out what happened. You get in there and you get your hands dirty, and you put your friendship and your relationship at risk to actually get the answers in order to help them, in order to support them, which is what I did. I came from a position where I didn't know much about what was going on in his life. I knew him from a musical point of view, but I didn't know what was the stories of these people. So I came with a very clean slate in that. I wasn't following any of his past stories, but I went in and I found out on both sides. I was looking at it from a very, very neutral point of view and listening and hearing things and going, this is not okay. What they're doing is lying, blatant lies, and knowing him and becoming friends with him and knowing the incredible human being he is, I realized how deep the lies fell and how deep the damage was, to his character. The smear campaign had been going on for a very, very long time, and was nothing like who he was. He'd been drowned in these stories of abuse, of underage sex and of, and even pedophilia, and by people that all wanted his money in some way and all wanted fame off of his name. Even from Tasha K, who claims that, other people are getting off on her name. No, it was her whole career developed on the lies and stories she fabricated around him. All of it. I was around at that time. I remember catching some of her earlier videos and thinking, why is she making him out into this person, this kind of monster? Why is she doing this predator? Does she know him at all? And, and where is she getting this information from? And wondering, and thinking in my head, a good person, a good-hearted human being doesn't do that. You don't find stories about somebody. You go online and you make them out to be a predator and a paedophile and all of these very serious crimes, and you don't make a whole 1 or 2 hour video about that based on stories you've heard from possibly stalkers. You don't do that. A good-hearted woman or man would listen to something like that and go, these are very serious accusations. I'm not going to go online and say these things when I'm not a detective. I'm not a police officer, and I have no investigative skills to actually find out if what these people are saying is true. And I could really do some damage here. I could really hurt another human being. Tasha K never did that. She ran with stories for her own benefit, and it had nothing to do with helping women. I mean, she kept saying that, and promoting that. I'm here to help black women and support black women. And a lot of people got away with that. These opportunists got away with saying that on social media and in the media. I'm here for black women. Meanwhile, they're profiting off of the situation, including the media. Everybody's profiting off of this situation. You have to see it that way. His attorneys, the prosecutors, every single person that's invested in this story with him is profiting, and they need it to keep going. They need it to be salacious. They need it to be true. And they can claim that they don't want, women to be hurt, but they do, because they profit off of it. Their profit margin is based on the fact that these stories are true. And when that goes away, they have to find the next victim. They have to find the next person that they can character smear, which is what Tasha K does all the time. I completely don't like what she does. I think she is the most horrible human being that was put on social media. And I think she's completely deluded in her narcissism about who she is. I think she thinks she's a good human being, but she's not. A good human being doesn't do that. A good human being experiences great empathy and puts themselves in other people's shoes. A good human being doesn't gossip and slander anybody that they don't know. But she makes her profit off of all of that on celebrities. Yes, they're celebrities, but they're still human beings, and that's what's kind of missed with all of this. So anyway, I'm going to end it here. I think I got the message out, and I think you should understand now why Azrael flipped. But you're going to hear more about this from both sides of the fence, with me and King, when we're together, which is going to be exciting for me, because I've been on this journey for 2 years on my own out here trying to explain this. And I've been doubted and taunted and, accused myself. I've experienced everything he has gone through on another level, but with his supporters and his fan base, which is what is the crazy thing. I've experienced exactly what he's going through, smearing, character smearing, and people accusing me of being something I'm completely not on another level. So I completely have an understanding of what my king has had to deal with on a very small level. But I was really surprised that his fans and his supporters know better. Some of them, I'm not saying all, but a lot of them. I've been called the devil by some of his supporters, his great supporters. And I can name off people that you wouldn't believe are supporting the harassment of other supporters and, of me, most importantly. And I can tell you, these same people who think that they're going to be somehow praised by him or held up by him are going to be in for a rude awakening, because of course I'm going to sit down with him and say, stay away from these people, because they called me the devil, they harassed me, or they allowed people to harass me as they promoted themselves as being the best speakers for him. I'm the best speaker for him. I'm his partner of 3 years. There isn't anyone else who can talk for him that knows him as closely or intimately as I do. No one on this planet, no one in his family, no one in his friendship group, no one. So if people are not listening to me, they're listening to a bunch of lies and hearsay. And I don't care who they think they are. They've deluded themselves if they think that their story or, their support of him is going to get any further than, on YouTube. Because, King is very clued in with me about who's who and who treats me well as well. I'm very clear about that. And there's not many, actually. In fact, I don't know any supporters who support me, any of his major supporters. You never hear my name spoken about on any of their YouTube channels, because they all have that one agreement that, she's a fraud. And, and it's going to be very, very humbling for them to find out who I really am to him and how important I am to him. And I can't wait for that day, because I think that everybody needs to be humbled about about this situation. Everybody, and I think anybody that assumes they know needs to take a step back, because as the Bible says, pride comes before a fall, and people are going to fall. and fall very heavily on their pride. And they're going to be very shocked at how wrong they were on all sides of the fence. And I think it's going to be a very great lesson for humanity in humility, in kindness, compassion, and love. And at the end of the day, me and King stand for those things: kindness, humility, compassion, and love. And I think if you don't stand for those things on all levels, and you're not treating everybody that way as much as you can, as far as it depends on you, then we want nothing to do with you. You have nothing to do with us. And I hope that message also goes out to his supporters and fans who are fighting and arguing and harassing each other and harassing innocent people and bullying people and bullying me and harassing me and accusing me and abusing me. Take that message to heart. You're not welcome. You're not part of what we're trying to do here on this planet. You're not part of what me and King are here for, which is to teach people to love and to love better and to be kinder. Anyway, I will leave it there, and I hope you all get this message clearly.